Hello, and welcome to another episode of Painting with Stephen. So, this is a day late, and I'll tell you why it's a day late. It was a very big painting. It's as simple as that. And if you are brave enough to have clicked on this video to watch me paint this ginormous painting, then good luck and good on you. My hope is that I can regale you with intriguing talking points that will help you get through this odyssey of a painting without getting too bored. And let me start off by saying that one interesting thing that happened to me over the weekend is that I was shooting at my shooting club. I'm a shooter, target shooter. In the UK, that's quite a rare hobby. But yeah, I'm a shooter. I really enjoy the sport. And I was at my shooting club. We were doing an underlever shoot, and it's like time drills and stuff like that. It's very fun. And shot. I'm a lefty, so a lot of the time, cartridges batter off my face and onto my arm and all that sort of stuff because I'm a lefty. Most guns are designed to be fired right-handed, and I shot, and then felt this thing, it was like an intense scratching pain on my arm. I was like, what is that? That didn't feel like a cartridge. Looked down, big hole in my arm. I wasn't shot, but it was a bit of shrapnel from the bullet, so like lead, a big bit of lead, shrapnel from the bullet. I don't know whether it fractured, ricocheted, went into my arm, but it was in deep. So I continued the detail, shot 2 more details, 3 more details. I was meant to be meeting a friend that day at 1. Instead, went home, dug it out with some tweezers, hacked away at my arm, covered it up with a bandage, then went to meet my friend. It was very fun. It was an interesting time. So I still have the lead. It's lying on my living room table right now. So there's a fun little story for you. It was quite crazy, to be fair. I've never had lead embedded in my arm before from shrapnel, so it was a new experience. So I'm posting this on Monday, genuinely not because of the shrapnel or anything stupid like that. I actually, when did I start painting this? I think I started painting this on Saturday, and then didn't get a chance to continue it Sunday, so I had to continue it today. This took a long time, purely just because of the size of the canvas and just the amount of but I suppose you could say detail that I ended up putting into it. So yeah, it took a long time, and yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing, this painting with acrylics, because essentially I am just continuing to on my layering journey. It's a totally different thing from the blending with oil paints, and in a way, although oil painting almost has a more sort of traditional reputation, you can get, in a lot of the ways, you can get far more traditional results quicker with acrylics because of the fast drying time and the fact that you're then able to layer and scumble and glaze over. Now let me just explain to you what my vision was for this painting. So, as you can see, I always start out, pretty much always, with umber. I either start out usually with umber or black. With my acrylic painting, I usually always start off with umber, just because again I want almost that more traditional look. And when you're looking at what I've got, obviously as you can see, I've always got my little sketch there, you know, that I do with just a graphic pencil to keep me right. What I originally had envisaged was some form of Arcadian Island, which is what I'm going to call this piece, by the way. Some form of, I don't want to go as far to say Jurassic, but I want a wild, untamed land that's been untouched by humanity, that's just incredibly vast and big feeling and dramatic and, you know, open space and lots of drama with the scene, but almost as if you're an explorer that's just about to come across this ginormous, undiscovered piece of land, and you're the very first human being that's ever gone on the shores. That's sort of what I wanted to try and capture with this Arcadian Island painting, and in order to do that, I felt like I needed to go big canvas, big composition, trying to create multiple layers and depth with fogs. But if you've seen my my Haunted Islands painting, I can't remember whether that was episode 12 or episode 11. If you've seen my Haunted Islands painting with Stephen episode, you know, almost a similar idea to that, but on a almost Jurassic, primeval scale, with just jagged mountains after jagged mountains being layered off with fog, and big dramatic clouds. One thing that I really wanted to achieve with this painting was to experiment with clouds and how I do clouds, and experiment with using acrylics to layer clouds instead of, shall we say, going with the flow. Because, okay, so here's the thing. If you watch a lot of oil painters on YouTube, you know, I won't name any by name, you know, but like essentially the idea is, right, and it's a great way to do clouds, it's a great way to paint, but essentially the idea is they will, when they're oil painting, they will put their base layer in, and this is something that obviously I've done in my previous episodes and stuff. You can look back at my previous oil painting episodes to see what I mean. You know, put their base layer of colour in, let's say it's a blue or a grey or whatever, and then what they'll do is they'll put in, let's say, a Paynes Grey with white, or even just a Paynes Grey. Sometimes I think Bob Ross did that, for example, just put in a Paynes Grey, then he'd add the white on the wet Paynes Grey and then blend it out. That's one way to do things, that's one way to achieve things, and you know, can give you very awesome, cool results, a really sheeny, blendy look, you know, looks very cool, professional. Here's the thing, I wanted to more achieve, instead of a wispy effect with my clouds, and oftentimes with oil painting, you know, like if you're using that sort of technique, what you're doing is you're putting in colour, then you're blending it to make it look all super silky and smooth, you know, and it's blending with the base layer of your sky, and it's you know. But what I wanted to more do with this one was experiment with, firstly, pre-compositional clouds, because a lot of the time what I do with skies is I just wing it. However, as you can actually see with the breakdown of my sketch, the sky is the vast majority of the painting. Okay, Now, if something's the vast majority of your painting, it's better probably not to wing it. It's probably better to actually look at your composition and go, what am I putting here, what am I putting there? So this was my first experiment with this painting, is layer your atmospheres, create this big, Arcadian island obviously, but try and, almost pre-plan where your clouds are going to be, use that as part of the compositional layout of your painting. Also, on this point, try and actually practice layering your colour to create the clouds, and also to create a three-dimensional effect. So, going in to this painting, that was one of my main goals, was to practice developing these dramatic, huge three-dimensional clouds with layering, because of the advantage of using acrylic, as in, like the fact that I don't have to wait really ages for base layers to dry. This was my plan. And, again, the fact that the majority of the painting is actually sky, and I actually had to readdress a mistake that I made with my sketch halfway through. I think I've cut that bit out, because I think I stopped filming when I readdressed this. But if you can see where I'm painting the cloud right now, obviously I'm painting almost highlights in to one of these clouds. Experimenting with my darks, my lights, and then adding in my blues as the base layer. See where I'm painting right now? You can see that I sketched out a waterfall originally, and I was like, no, that doesn't work. That, I was trying to wrestle in my head, how would that work with, compositionally? It doesn't make any sense. So then I ended up bringing that waterfall all the way down and resketching the whole thing, so that it was sort of almost pushed back with atmosphere, but sort of beside the tree. Now, and I'll revisit this later on, because there was another thing that I did off camera that I'm going to have to tell you about, so that the final image makes sense. So, where you're seeing that little sketch, that little graphite sketch of the waterfall, that is actually going to become sky. Now, here's another thing. This is more relevant to what I'm actually doing right now. Is if you actually look at my blues, okay, it sometimes, again, we've talked about this so many times before in previous episodes, sometimes if you want to create, for example, like a base colour, like let's say blue, for your sky, or greens for rolling hills or whatever, you still have to add tons and tons of intrigue, right, into that colour. You cannot keep it one solid colour. It's just going to be boring to the eye. So, with my blues right now, okay, what I'm doing is I've got tons of little micro shades going on. I've got darker blues, lighter blues, greyer blues, more umber based blues, darker, you know what I mean, like moodier blues, lighter blues, greyer blues, you name it. And I'm just layering them on top of each other. A lot of the time I'm waiting for layers to dry, using the acrylic fast drying time, and then I'm going in again, boom, with another colour variation of my blue. Doing the same with the clouds. When I'm painting these clouds, okay, a lot of the time I've just got varying shades of umbers and greys, and then a yellowish highlight tinge colour where I've added yellow, umber, grey, to make my highlight colour. And I'm just repetitively like letting it dry, adding it in, letting it dry, adding it in. Of course, with the idea of some bits are going to be darker, some bits are going to be lighter because of where the light is. That goes without saying, or at least it should. However, no, like when you actually look at how these clouds are done, basically what you're doing is you are waiting for a layer to dry, then you're rediscovering sort of how you're approaching that cloud. You're going in again and going boom, 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 adding new colour, fresh colour. That's the process, okay? That's how we're getting this sort of almost three-dimensional cloud effect, or at least that's the plan. Obviously, I mean, that's the whole idea. At least, I'm not gonna, say that, how successful I am till the end or whatever. But basically, that's in my head the idea that I'm going for. Is I want to create these ultra, almost like, because do you know how sometimes, right? You're walking around in nature, you're admiring the incredibly beautiful skies and the sunsets, the sunrises, and sometimes if it's just a nice bright sunny day. When I was in Tuscany a few weeks ago, it's incredible because different landscapes and even when you're in a different place, for some reason the skies take on a different spiritual meaning, don't they? For example, when you're in Scotland, it's technically the same sky, you could argue, that you would see in England or France or Italy, but the spiritual power of the sky changes, the emotional intent of it changes with the landscape that you're in, and also the cultural significance that landscape means to that place. I think when I was in Tuscany, firstly you could see, basically every single landscape was like a Renaissance painting, because these Renaissance painters walked around looking at all this incredible stuff and went, oh my god, we need to capture this. One thing that really stuck out to me was with these soft, bright, sunny skies, you had these ginormous three-dimensional clouds. This is why I bring this up, because obviously sometimes, for example, if it's a more wet, rainy day, dreich day, as we would say in Scotland, oftentimes you won't get that. You'll get more sort of big, sometimes big solid grey clouds, but also sometimes you'll just get wispy clouds that almost look like they're blending in with the sky. That's where that amazing oil painting technique really comes into its own. However, when we're dealing with ginormous big three-dimensional clouds, often in sunny days, you'll find that it's just like a big three-dimensional blob, floating around, just doing its own thing, travelling around, having a great time, just being a cloud. No, but in seriousness though, that's, oftentimes you do see that where it's, you've got this incredible, just, it looks almost like a mountain or a landform, doesn't it? Because of, and what's creating that effect, by the way, is the contrast between lights and darks. Now, if you're like into art or, have discovered painting, and then all of a sudden you go out into nature, everything's different, isn't it? It looks different because you start to look at things with a totally different perspective, a different eye for detail and for how things are made up compositionally. One of those things is the fact that, see, like, the way things actually get the effects, like for example the three-dimensionality of a cloud, you start to notice, oh, I know why that is. That's because the contrast of colour is so massive, whereas with that wispy cloud, there's no contrast of colour. Therein lies the secret when you're painting them then, right? So is true in nature, so is true on the canvas. If you want to create big three-dimensional clouds, the key is colour contrast, contrasting your lights and your darks. The same goes for any ginormous, grand thing. For example, like a mountain. I'm painting a mountain right now. What's giving it its three-dimensional shape is colour contrast. I know it seems obvious to say, right? I know it sounds almost like ludicrous to try and pretend, that's that it could be any other way. But the thing is, it is so important, right? And when I was beginning my painting journey, I don't think I'd properly grasped that. I mean, okay, yeah, I think we all think we're grasping it, but when we're actually painting things, that's a different story, isn't it? Because all of a sudden, a lot of the time, we aren't grasping it. That's why our works look two-dimensional. That's why so often things go so wrong. Because we're not grasping that concept properly. Anyway, I'm painting in this mountain with my letter opener. Later on, I actually use a real palette knife, believe it or not. But those mountains, they are done with my letter opener. Again, I'm really just basically, see, a lot of the time the way I paint rocks and stuff like that with the letter opener. I mean, this is straight from Bill Alexander, you could say, right? I mean, it's not, but it's the same idea, right? Just sort of using the palette knife to create a textured effect and all these little interesting details without really trying. But then also, I think it's just really useful to generate shapes, jagged shapes. A lot of the time, palette knives are really good for that. Letter openers, stuff like that, it's really good for that. But I think one really important thing about it is the fact that, see, when you're doing it, you have to keep that that idea still in your head. I mean, it's very tempting, for example, to sort of just pick up a whole dot of paint and just start messing around with it. And sometimes I do that even still to this day, where I've still not, I'm not adhering to thinking about lights and darks properly like I should be. But then other times, by the way, you're ad-libbing it because you know that it's just going to come, right? Because I think a lot of people are really just afraid to put paint on a canvas unless there's a plan, but oftentimes you just know innately it's going to work out. If you've done it a million times, I think a lot of painters, they get into routines and they know that things will work out innately. It doesn't really matter what you do, almost like you just fire stuff on and it's all going to work out. To a certain extent, you can get away with then just sort of putting, textured shapes in with the palette knife. Because then what's going to happen is you can then go, I'll move this here, move this there, and now it's a mountain, or I'll move this here and move this there, and now it's waves or whatever. However, so often, and especially if I was a beginner, looking back on some of the stuff that I did, I would go, try and understand and think about the facts that lights and darks are what creates three-dimensionality. It's not just the shape of something. Like, as in, see, you see when you're painting a tree, yeah, okay, you've got an outline of a tree, you're painting a tree, that's great. What creates the three-dimensionality of the tree though is the fact that you're gonna have to put in your colour properly. So keep that in mind. But yeah, so as you can see, I've actually moved down my sketch. You see that? My graphic sketch. So now it's a different type of waterfall that I've created because I'm moving the whole sky down. Which is the way it should have been in the first place. I just did an oopsie, it wasn't like I'm just doing this for artistic reasons or anything. It was the fact that I don't think it would have even compositionally worked if I hadn't done that. And also I think I sort of had it in my head that I was going to do this anyway, but then just put this sketch sort of in the wrong place, so I needed to get that addressed before I moved on with my sky. I realised, oh wait, hold on, that's in the wrong place. Can't continue on with this. Need to readdress it. Thank goodness I did, because it would have been a colossal waste of time, because it just would not have compositionally worked if I kept that original sketch. But this thing, with so many things in art, right? Don't be afraid to change things. Don't be afraid, because I feel like people get solidified in a plan, and everyone's guilty for that. The sketch was this way, and so I'm gonna follow the sketch. No, if you can then see that something is a glaring problem, just change it. Just go and change it. Here's the thing. I think that's one of the main things about being a painter, isn't it? Is that essentially what you have to do is you have to off the cuff make decisions under pressure. And there is pressure. I mean, I think this painting, okay, I didn't feel a lot of pressure when painting it, okay, but it was getting to that stage a little bit sometimes, where I was a bit like, oh, for goodness sake, but it also was taking hours and hours and hours. I was just like, just see it through. I think the most stressful painting I've painted, certainly on this channel, in recent times, was the wave painting. Can't remember what episode that was, but the wave painting was stressful. Wild Waves, I called it on this channel, if you want to go check it out. And yeah, it was a stressful painting to paint, no doubt. And one of the things that made it so stressful, now I realise, is again using the oil medium. It's just everything becomes so wet and you're slipping and sliding about. Sometimes that can be a great advantage, it really can. Sometimes it can be a brilliant asset to your painting process, because essentially what you're doing is sort of allowing yourself the space to make off-the-cuff decisions and move paint around and blend things on canvas and stuff like that. Whereas with acrylic, it's solidified, as sort of as soon as you put it on, that's it. In a way, acrylics and oils are hard for different reasons, or easy for different reasons, depending on either A, the type of painting or that you're trying to do, or B, the type of painter you are. Because in a way, acrylics are easier because when you put something on, you can just sort of paint over it if you don't like it. There's always that option. But then with oil paints, that's almost, that's very difficult to do. I mean, you can do it, and I've done it many times before, rubbing oil off of a canvas to then reapply and stuff like that. You can do it, it's possible. It's a lot harder. But the thing is, okay, on the flip side, obviously, you then have this sort of thing where with oil paints, you're not rigidly stuck in your ways. Like if you like, I think that's maybe where some of the struggle comes from with acrylics for a lot of people is. So for example, when you paint something with acrylic and it's a mistake, then all of a sudden a lot of people go, oh well, it's on the canvas now. You know, they get into this mindset of not being able to change it, like as in, or like they feel like they're emotionally sort of almost not able to do it. With oils, that's not such a big deal, because you can just sort of move paint around, it's gone, or erase something almost by blending out or whatever. But here's the flip side of that problem, is that with oils, you've got the issue of things getting rather chaotic. That's the one of the problem with oils, is that things can get rather messy, and if you're not willing to go with the flow and just accept that and accept where things are going to go, and like, you know, that it's going to be a sort of a journey, a genuine painting journey where you're going to almost be taken on an adventure with the painting process. You know, oils might not be the medium for you, because oils take a lot of, you know, they take a lot of patience, they take a lot of confidence. I think that's sort of one of the things that either is great about oil or awful about oil, is, you know, you're making yourself sort of put yourself in this position of, I'm slipping and sliding about all over the place, nothing's dry, every colour can get muddied. That's a dangerous position to be in, whereas with acrylics it's not like that at all. You know, you can wait 10 minutes and then the colour's dry, and you know, it's almost solidified on there, so you can just sort of go, oh, okay, I'll just add this on, add that on, add this on. Yeah, it's different. I hope you can excuse me, I'm just going to take a drink because this is a long video, so... So yeah, I mean, one thing that I really wanted to do with this painting was to capture light as well. That's one thing I really wanted to achieve with this painting, is to really capture light properly. And yeah, I think, you know, like the way it's hitting the clouds to bring out the three-dimensionality of the clouds, to then come down, smack that mountain, because as you can see, the clouds is probably taking the brunt of the light, so you've got those mountains up there, aren't getting really illuminated, with that yellowish light, but then boom, then that mountain is getting illuminated with that yellowish light, and then these big three stones, these big primeval jagged rocks down here at the coast. Oh man, yeah, I mean, they're gonna get hit with this beautiful yellowish heavenly light, and so I enjoyed this again, utilizing light perspective, I was a little bit concerned with, just how exactly I was going to do the coast. I had a general idea, a general sketch, that was it. Like all of these things, trial and error, practice. I mean, you're just sort of putting yourself in the position of, who knows, just figure it out when you get there. So although there is a sketch there, it's not like you have a concrete plan in your head. A lot of it is just like, okay, well, once I actually get there, I'll find a way, But these giant rocks that I'm painting right now, I mean, I definitely had an idea of you know, what I was going to do with them, but not so much, yeah, like, how I was going to approach them in a way, because, yeah, like, I guess what colours you're using and stuff like that, it all almost depends on the session, doesn't it? Like the painting session, you start to almost just become like, oh, okay, well, if it works out this way, then I'll do it this way, you know. Yeah, again, you have to, you know, make decisions under pressure. That's one of the things that, you know, you have to do as a painter. And you know, just see where it takes you. But you know, with these three rocks, I just really wanted them to be, again, like, to almost represent a primeval spirit, a primeval sort of landscape that, you know, sort of seems untouched by us, you know. And for the next episode, I actually think I'm going to be doing the exact opposite. You know, I think next episode, what I'm probably planning to do is a tomb inspired by my Etruscan tombs that I saw in Tuscany, but also maybe, you know, a bit more gothic, maybe more Bocklinish. You know, something maybe, you know, again, like bringing in, you know, some symbolist sort of colour usage and you know, vibe. And I'm very, very excited to almost go from one extreme to the other, you know, like almost like a kept landscape, but almost like it's creepy, it's sort of symbolically eerie, you know, whereas something more like you know, this, where it's untamed, and almost in a way it's exciting, it's got drama and mystique because it's so untamed, whereas sometimes, you know, see when like humanity and you know, like you know, we sort of get involved and start taming a landscape, oftentimes that makes it naturally eerie. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone listening, but I guess what I'm saying is that, like, okay, you know, imagine, for example, like a beautiful coastline that's been untouched by humanity, right? Like this, for example. There's something exciting and adventurous about that, magical maybe, but also maybe eerie, you know. And I just love eerie paintings, I love eerie atmospheres, I love, you know, just that really just excites me, you know, because there's a drama to it. But imagine just off, you know, where those mountains are, those like you know, a statue or a pillar or something, completely change everything. It would give everything almost a more still, dead energy. Does that make any sense? Because there's clearly remnants of a civilization there that are no longer with us. Sometimes the humanity in a landscape actually makes it feel still and dead, and sometimes things like, you know, for example, garden scenes and stuff like that can almost feel a bit too still, a bit too dead. And yeah, I think that's really interesting, you know, because obviously when we cultivate a landscape, when we make it ours, we're putting our cultural motifs onto it, or symbolic meanings onto it, and that is then when we can utilise it for something like a painting in a symbolic way. And that's often why you do get these eerie atmospheres, right, with, you know, runes and different things like that. Whereas this, I've almost intentionally tried to channel a ruggedness, a lack of humanity, you know, a lack of human engineering or spiritual significance. It's so wild, it's so untamed that almost a human has never seen it. You know, who knows of often those forests that I'm painting, you know, on those big cliffs, you know, in the distance. Who knows what you'll be able to find there? You know, what sort of beasts and creatures, and, you know, like, you know, what type of flora, fauna, what's going on. Giadol. That is Gaelic for what's going on, by the way. Scots Gaelic. Who knows, right? Like, we don't know what's you know, and that in a way is creepy also. That's got that, you know, adds a mystery to it. It's a bit, you know, like you know, the whole sort of idea of landing on an untouched landscape in sci-fi, right? Like when you land on a, you know, like you're in a spaceship, for example, you land on a completely untouched planet. It's extremely majestic, grand, beautiful, that, you know, nature has created these incredible pieces of art to marvel at that we've never seen before. But then all of a sudden, you know, the plant life, the animal life, the insect, the diseases, you know, it's all against you, right? Like, or you're not prepared for what you're about to see, you know, what's coming. You know, you don't understand, you know, you have no frame of reference. And I think that's, you know, also adds to, you know, untamed landscapes. They're creepy in that way, aren't they? They are creepy in that way because, you know, all of a sudden you're put in this uncomfortable situation where you don't know what you're going to find. So yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff, I think. It's pretty exciting stuff. So see what I'm doing right now. I just want to quickly touch on this, right? So you've got your three big rocks that are going to make up the coast. You can barely see the smaller one, unfortunately. It's annoying from this angle, but you can see the two big ass ones at the front, right? And then we're painting this mixture of greenery and cliffs at the back here. Okay, so we've got sort of cliffs and rocks and jagged landscapes, but we've also got, you know, forests and grass and God knows what else over there. And the reason that I'm adding in all those greens and browns and earth colours is because that's where my waterfall's gonna go, right? So you know, I'm adding that in, you know, just because where water is, you tend to find life, right? It's actually really fascinating because, you know, see in big cave systems, like, you know, for example, like if you're like looking at sort of caves carved out by water, you know, subterranean waterfalls, oftentimes if you look at landscapes around that, right, the reason, for example, the Apulian Alps or somewhere like that has no trees at the very, very top is because all of the water has actually trickled down through those rocks, you know, into these subterranean waterfall systems, and so all the water is actually displaced from the top, and so the top of the mountains are bare. But oftentimes it's also just atmosphere as well, but it's just one of those sort of interesting things that can happen in nature. A lot of the time that's, you know, there's no water at, you know, higher levels for anything to grow because it all trickles down, and then, you know, starts to form these subterranean caves. In this particular case, you know, I'm just painting all of this greenery around where there is a water source, you know, because, well, that's what you would find in nature, to a certain extent. I mean, you know, because obviously I'm not trying to be photorealistic or accurate to science, or I mean, who cares, you know? I mean, obviously, if you're trying to prove a symbolic or artistic point, those things don't really tend to come into it. You're painting with emotional intent, not with, you know, want for scientific accuracy, for example. But yeah, it's a really sort of good way as well to sort of push back scenes in a way, because with your greens and your browns and this sort of thing, what you're essentially doing is you're, you know, a lot of the time muting the contrast, which, you know, ties in with the conversation we were having at the beginning of the painting. Contrast equals three-dimensionality. A lot of the time, the higher contrast and the higher the contrast of colour, the more forward it is in the scene, and the more it will catch your eye. And so, oftentimes, using muted and flat colours, you know, like browns and greens and sort of faded, subdued earth colours, there's not a lot of contrast. It's going to push back in the scene. And you know, that was an intentional decision, obviously, to create a layered atmospheric effect. So yeah, and now I'm adding in this waterfall. Okay, so here we go. Here's the story of the waterfall, right? I painted it in. I thought it was far too bright. So then I started messing around with, you know, putting browns and, you know, sort of, because do you know how, for example, in a highland landscape, and oftentimes with, you know, rocky and mountainous terrains and boggy terrains and where forests are and stuff, a lot of the time the water will actually take colour from peat and from other things, and it will become brown. So it was far too bright, it was far too light, and it was sort of almost like pushing itself forward in the scene, which was annoying me. So I started going, okay, I'm gonna add some browns into this waterfall to push it back a little bit. And I did that, and then it sort of was a bit like too brown. So I was like, okay, what am I gonna do here? So I kept on playing around with the waterfall, and the reason that I bring this up is because eventually I actually left it a colour that was a bit too bright. So off camera at the very end, I actually toned it down again with a brown. So the end result that you're going to see is actually going to be further pushed back again from what you see the painting being. You know, me painting it because I decided, you know, I took the executive decision to push it back once more, you know, and brownify it again, just so that it was a little bit more push back. So yeah, that's what ends up happening. It's really good fun though. It's really good fun painting, you know, especially just, you know, things that you've never done before. And this is the thing, like, a waterfall like this is new to me. You know, I've never really painted a scene like this in general, to be honest. You know, you know, I can't think of a comparable thing that I've ever done. And so this was a new experience to me. and I was happy with the fact that it was a new experience. You know, like I think that's the thing. Like when you're doing something like this, yeah, it can be quite daunting, I guess would be a word. I decided, by the way, just to quickly talk about what I'm doing here, to add like a sort of crazy dark landform in here, okay? But then push it back with mist by layering on top. Then I decided it's a bit small. I really liked the idea, but it's a bit small. So then what I decided to do is actually make it a lot bigger, which you'll see me do, and then amalgamate that smaller landform into my big landform, and then just make the whole thing one landform, which then I was going to push back with a mist, you know, that greyish foggy mist colour that I'm using to create that cloud effect. So that's what I ended up doing. See a lot of the time, layering is what creates your sort of compositional layering. So if compositional layering is something that you struggle with, often just be patient and wait for a layer to dry, and then cover it with your sky colour or cover it with a different colour, and it will push it back instantly, right? See, if you're a musician, do a lot of audio recording or session work or musical work or whatever. If anyone's listening to this as a musician, in a way, see the mist effect when painting, and you know, like layering your mist like this. It's a bit like echo in a mix, you know. I mean, in the sense that it pushes it back in a mix, but a lot of the time in a very beneficial way. Like, for example, this is really interesting, because from a musicianship point of view, what a lot of people will do is, for example, they'll record something and they'll just paste echo all over it, thinking it makes it sound really good. And oftentimes it does, if you're utilising that in an artistic way. I love echo. I'm not, you know, ever trying to, you know, say that that's wrong, the wrong approach. But what I'm saying is that oftentimes it's not beneficial because it pushes everything back. It also muddies things. But basically, you know, for example, there's some things you want to be forward in a mix and some things you want to be back in a mix. Like, for example, your vocals, if you're a singer, should tend to be pretty forward in a mix, right? Like, you know, that's what you want front and centre, because that's what the focal point should be on. That's what the viewer's attention, the listener's attention, should be on. So slapping tons of echo on it, thinking it's going to cover up mistakes or anything like that, firstly isn't true. Echo doesn't cover up mistakes. And second of all, it will push your vocals back in the mix and create a more subdued effect. So actually you're doing yourself a disservice. You want that to be front and centre. You want your vocals to have power. The more power they have, the more people are going to pay attention to them. So you're actually almost, you know, shooting yourself in the foot a little bit there, you know. Well, very similar with fog or atmosphere in a painting, because it doesn't have to just be fog. Like, for example, you could paint, let's say you're painting like a coast scene, right? And let's say in this coast scene you have an island form off in the horizon, off in the distance. So you use these big bold colours, okay, and you go, no, it's too forward. It looks too forward in the composition. right? I think every artist has been there, right? Where they use colours that are almost a bit too, oh geez, that's too forward, right? So what do? Well, what you do is you can put some sky colour over it, right? Like wait for the layer to dry, put some sky colour over it, and then all of a sudden pushes it all back into the sky. So it looks like part of the horizon. Yeah. These little tricks are only possible if you wait for your layers to dry. This is why actually in a way a lot of the time oil painting can be so challenging in other ways that acrylics aren't, and vice versa. Because the flip side to that is with oil painting you could also theoretically have a similar situation but fix it by just sort of maybe blending out the colours a bit and then adding on fresh colour on top that solves the problem or whatever it is, or utilising the colour that's already on the canvas to then blend it out a little bit to create a little bit of fog or whatever it is, so it just depends. With this waterfall you could argue that I pushed it back. I didn't push it back with mist. I mean, I could have done that, but I didn't really want the waterfall to be a distraction in that way. I was actually really tempted to add an oil layer just to that little bit of the painting actually, to create an atmospheric fog over the waterfall, but I decided against it at the very end because I was just like, something that works, and that's I'm happy with it, so I may as well keep it the way it is. So yeah, I was happy with the way eventually it turned out, but at the same time, I think with atmospheric tricks, that's one thing that you really wanna sort of keep under your hat. I think it's a really good trick. I really do. As you can see, I'm just painting this tree. And I mean, it's actually mostly, colour-wise, it's mostly umber, like raw umber and grey that I'm utilising for the tree at the moment. Which just shows you, like again, we've discussed before on this channel about, sort of falling into schema traps, as I would like to call them, where essentially you go, oh, a tree is brown, so then you start putting on all this really saturated brown colour, and it just doesn't look right, it doesn't look real, it doesn't look good. So yeah, I think oftentimes that's a mistake, right? It's like with blues in the sky. Sometimes you can fire in very saturated blues into the sky and it just looks sort of crap, sort of almost cartoonish, not alive, not dynamic, just sort of spoils the whole thing. So a lot of the ways to solve that is literally just to firstly, don't fall into the schema trap. Don't think the sky is blue, the grass is green, the tree is whatever colour. Try and utilise whatever colour is useful to you in the composition. If you're painting from a photograph, or if you're painting from real life, you hone in on what that colour really is. Really think about it, because it probably, chances are, will be completely different from what you expect it to be, if you know what I mean. But if you're like me right now, where I'm literally just making it up, I'm making up a composition, there's no photo reference for this, in that case, then what you need to do is you need to sort of just tone down your colour a little bit, I would say. I personally enjoy toning down colours with umber, with grey. I don't know why I said that so dramatically there, but yeah, I really enjoy toning things down with umber. I think that umber is an incredibly useful colour for that. It's actually quite incredible how dynamic, especially a raw umber can be. I mean, burnt umber too, but yeah, I mean, wow, like raw umber you can mix into pretty much anything, and it will instantly subdue it. At least that's my experience, right? Like it will desaturate colour pretty much instantly. I don't know whether that, you know, like a lot of people would probably think that I'm, you know, a bit of an idiot, you know, like people that are far better at colour theory than me, or, you know, for example, utilise the colour wheel to tone down their colours, or, you know, complementary colours and all these other things that you can use to tone down colour for a more tonalist effect. But I think a good rule of thumb, if you really want to get easy with tonalism, for example, is pretty much put umber in everything. And I know, you know, if anyone's made it this far into this video and they're a tonalist painter and they're going, what a stupid thing to say, Stephen McKnight, you bloody idiot, don't teach people that. Yeah, but I do. I really do think that you can pretty much literally just put umber in every colour and it will instantly tone it down, desaturate it, make it look better, and it just looks good. There is not a single thing on this canvas right now that I have got in front of me that I'm painting on that doesn't have umber in it. Right, I mean that is how useful umber is when mixing. There's not a single thing on the canvas that I have mixed, including the yellows in the sky, the rock colours, the tree, the greens in the tree branch, or in the tree leaves, the mountain greys, all of it, the mist, the clouds, all of it has got umber mixed in to desaturate it. That shows you how effective umber is. Okay, and by the way, see the sea colour that I'm currently painting? Also got umber in it. Okay, because the blues, if you don't put umber in it, it's just going to be too saturated. It's just going to be so blue, too blue, right? I've also, obviously I'm utilising greens and all sorts to thin the water, you know, at where the waterfall is. But, yeah, I mean, it really does show you. It's interesting, you know, because you think that, you know, creating all these, oftentimes muddy colour, I think we've talked about this before on this channel too, oftentimes muddy colour is actually very, very beneficial, right? Because, you know, nothing in real life is particularly clean cut, is it? Unless it's like, you know, man-made, or, you know, some form of, you know, cartoonish thing, or, you know, like if you're painting a Pepsi Max bottle, or like if you're painting the Pepsi logo, or you're painting, you know, like some sort of man-made thing with super saturated colour, then yeah, great. But most of the time, things in nature are far more subdued, far more delicate, far more stripped back, right? In terms of saturation and colour intensity. So when you're painting, okay, in that style, and you want things to be more subdued, eerie, creepy, tonalist, whatever, or just realistic, you know, try and think of it in that way. Go, okay, let's, just automatically, I would recommend at least once, automatically toning everything down with Umber. Oh, honestly, try it. See where it gets you. See if you enjoy it. Just the instantly sort of more subdued effect that will come from. I think you will enjoy it. So there you go. You've got, the seal of approval. Okay, I'm telling you, you're gonna enjoy it. Now go and do it. Go and put Umber in your bloody paint. And I in a way thought that was again more of a sort of oil painting thing. For whatever reason, I always thought acrylics would be super cartoonishly saturated. I don't know why I had this idea in my head about acrylics, that they were going to be crazy bright and almost unwieldingly bright, like very strong, but I was wrong. It seems to me, to my personal experience, is I've been able to get fine colours, very subdued greens and very subdued blues, and very subdued nice aqua sea colours and stuff, utilising acrylics, and especially raw umber acrylic. As you see, I'm chewing away on chewing gum there. This is where I started to get a little bit impatient, like in terms of, it was taking so bloody long to paint this thing. So I did start to go, I need a de-stressor. Here's a fun fact for you. Chewing gum was invented by the American military, okay? I don't know if anyone's interested in this, but chewing gum was invented by the American military as a de-stressor, basically to take away anxiety, so that people could literally just chew on it and, distract you, doesn't it? I mean, we all know how chewing gum works. So it's interesting. I fast a lot. I've fallen out of habit, for years I've fasted 3 days a week usually, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. But very recently, I've been enjoying myself too much, holidaying too much, but also there's been a lot of really stressful things going on in my life very recently. And I sort of, I'm quite guilty for using food as almost just like enjoying, like hedonistic thing, where I'll have it for the sake of having it because it's enjoyable. I also love to cook. I'm a massive fan of like cooking my own meals and really enjoy that process, and so food's a major part of my life. And it got to the stage where when I was young, I was quite overweight, and it was probably my main pleasure was food, like in terms of guilty pleasures. And so I admitted it was a problem. I was like, how I want to master my discipline, my willpower. Like, I want to be able to sort of withhold the greatest pleasure I have from myself. And so in order to do that, I started fasting. So I started fasting, maybe 1-2 days a week at first, and then I went into every week, for years. It was a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday fast. I then developed this thing called hemochromatosis, because oftentimes I would actually fast 4 days a week. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I weightlift, I ruck. I always make sure I ruck 65 kg every Thursday. Go a massive hill walk with weights. I'm a big believer in that. and so I would keep busy with all of this sort of stuff instead of eating. But yeah, then I developed hemochromatosis, which is like an iron problem with your blood, basically, where your blood is too iron rich. So then, because of that, I stopped being able to fast as much, because they take pints of blood from you, to solve the problem, basically. So, I go for venisections every second Wednesday. So then I was not able to fast as much. I wasn't able to, for example, fast on a Wednesday afternoon like I usually did. But yeah, here's, I guess, the point I'm trying to make here. I'm being very long-winded. Is that recently I have literally just been overindulging in food, but also because there's been a lot of stress recently, just overindulging in multiple ways, like for pleasure and just because of, like hedonistic reasons and stuff. So I was like, I need to get back to fasting, and now I'm back to a proper routine again, where I hope that I'm going to be able to, fast at least 4 days a week on my non-venesection days, 3 days a week on my venesection weeks, 4 days a week on my venesection, my non-venesection weeks, and 3 days a week on my venesection weeks. And yeah, I guess the reason I brought this up was because chewing gum is actually really useful for that, in the sense that you can just chew away at it and you just keep your mind busy, yeah, it's very useful for that, I think, because then you're not really focused on like, oh, I need to go eat something, I need a snack or any of that sort of stuff. You're just chewing away on your chewing gum, and you don't really miss eating that much. I mean, obviously there's other ways to keep yourself disciplined and stuff like that, but I really like fasting. I do think that it does help keep discipline. I'm a sort of working on tons of projects right now as well, so time is a factor, and money, because food costs a lot of money. And fasting alleviates that problem, so you can actually go and spend on quality ingredients when you do cook, and make lovely nutritious meals when you do cook, but aren't constantly spending money on, just perpetually, basically feeding yourself, but then also time is a massive factor. Like if you want to write, paint, work out, make music, see friends, see family, spend time with your girlfriend, there's only so many hours in the day, right? And also, sleep, because you need to sleep. So, a lot of the time fasting is really useful, just honestly, just from a time saving perspective. And it's these sort of topics, ranging from miscellaneous topics, but more sort of bordering on life skills, philosophy, all of these sort of things, ideas, just anything that involves ideas, that I'm going to be talking about in my Agora episodes. And I'm very, very excited to make another Agora episode. I enjoyed episode 1, like making episode 1. Yeah, I thought episode 1 was awesome. I didn't even notice my cat Daisy wanted out until this very moment, and now I'm looking at her, she's pawing at the door, poor thing, wanting out of that room. But I know that she did get out eventually, because I'm pretty sure my girlfriend came and actually let her out. But oh, look at her. She's very cute, isn't she? She's a cutie pie. Daisy is so cute, and she's also so smart. She's such an incredibly smart cat. She's got tons of personality. She's very old. I think she's like 17 years old now. So she's an incredibly old cat, but she's still so lively, and she's got so much energy and youthful vitality in her eyes. You know, she's just, she's still a very active cat. It's very good. I think it's so important to, if you do have a cat, let them outside. I think that keeps them young, because they can actually frolic around and, you know, like enjoy being outside. I think that's a major thing, isn't it? It's just like us, we need nature. We need to go out and be in nature. From a spiritual point of view, I mean, look at our ancestors. I mean, I do believe that we are culturally tied to the land that we're born in. Like as in, you know, where we belong, you know. I'm a Scot. My native homeland of Scotland has religious significance to me, and it always will. It doesn't matter where you go, it's always going to be that way, you know, and you're always going to have you know, this incredible significance where your native home is. I just think that's the way it is. I mean, obviously I could go into much further detail on my views on that and my opinions, but I'll save that for an Agora episode, you know. I don't want to bore anybody, you know, with you know, these abstract philosophical ideas or whatever when I'm painting. Very quickly, actually, just going back to the painting, which is obviously why, if anyone is actually watching, you know, why you would be watching this is the painting, not me prattling on about God knows what. Talking about waves, okay, so compare the way that I'm doing waves here to my Wild Waves video, where I was utilising oil paint, okay. Night and day, not even comparable, because with this you can literally layer colour, and layer colour, dry layer. It's not possible if you're dealing with, you know, oil painting, as we've already previously discussed, right? Not possible. Not how it works, right? What's going to end up happening is you're going to end up basically getting yourself into a big mess is what you're going to end up doing. And oftentimes that's absolutely fine, but you need to be prepared for that. Whereas doing waves this way, the mess is sort of subsided a little bit, you know. The sting is taken away, you know, because really all you need to do is you need to put your colours in, you know, then, you know, utilise the, you know, find the shapes of the wave, you know, and just work it all out and bang away, really. It's so much less complicated. You know, with oil paints, it's you're slapping and sliding all over the place. Yeah, it can get stressful. It can get really stressful when you're painting with oils. But I love oils. This is acrylic, and I am adoring acrylic as well. I love painting in acrylic now. It's a totally different ball game, but I adore oils as well, and you know, I definitely want to continue to do more mixed medium stuff. I think mixed medium's so important. You know, like as in my work, in my life, it's important to me because I think, you know, doing these one painting videos a week, and you know, it's unfortunate that I didn't get it out last week. That's annoying, but you know, technically, I'm still aiming that it's basically going to be one a week, right? Like, I mean, it's a Monday, you know, give me a break, you know. You know, it's the day after Sunday, so, you know, I almost got there. But, yeah, like, acrylics are just so useful for being able to create lots of detail in a short space of time. Okay, they're very useful for that. It's just the way it is. Yeah. Do you know what's really annoying is that I'm looking right now at the waterfall the way it currently is, and I'm going, that looks quite cool. You know, brighter, maybe a bit more forward, but I'm glad that I did tone it down. You'll see what I mean when you get to the end of the video. I toned down the waterfall by adding more browns in again, you know, just to push it back a little bit. Yeah, I mean, hey ho, it's done. The waterfall isn't even meant to be a focal point anyway. It's meant to be like a tiny little thing, you know. I mean, it's one detail out of many, isn't it? You know. Yeah, I mean, I discussed this on my Wild Wave video. See, to get that really nice eye of the wave colour, seafoam green as I would like to call it, you know, that sort of, you know, like aqua blue, aqua green colour. The way that you would do that is by mixing in yellow and green. Traditionally, when I was oil painting, I would have used Naples yellow and phthalo green. That was my sort of secret weapon when I was doing sea scenes, seascapes. Was, you know, phthalo green, Naples yellow, brilliant combination. Here, I'm literally just using a green. I don't even know what it is. I think it's literally just, you know, like some sort of chemical green acrylic colour, you know. You know what I mean? It's like straight out the tube green, mixed with umber, mixed with my blues, my greys, you know, then also mixed with a little bit of yellow to get that seafoam green colour. And yeah, it's really nice just to get that. I mean, again, you can see I'm sort of adding in a little bit of that colour there, you know, just to get, you know, yeah, just to get a little bit of highlights. Painting waves is super fun, you know. Super fun. It's one of those things that, you know, like, I think at first can be quite intimidating, but once you just sort of relax a little bit and then just go with the flow, you know, get drifted around by the current, you know, drift off, you know. I'm not going to crack any more sea puns, but you know, basically just relax, go with the flow, and you know, just almost let your sketch do the work, you know, let the wave take its shape, you know. You know, you're gonna get it right eventually. You just need to keep on banging on and keep on working at it. Yeah, and then eventually you will get there. Waves are one of those sort of it's just trial and error with waves, you know. That's all it is, trial and error. You will eventually get like a cool shape that looks good and looks like a big old wave, you know. That's what you want. I'm quite happy with how these waves turned out. Quite happy with how these turned out, you know, sort of very much sort of just rolling, crashing waves, and then just again doing little palette knife rocks, you know. Yeah, probably the biggest thing that I actually really enjoy about painting waves is the colour. It's something about water, and the colour of water is just mystical, magical, ethereal to me. There's something so special going on with you know, like, see for example the seafoam green colour, and the, you know, the sort of tranquil light blues of water. I just love it. I've always loved it. I've always found it really enchanting. So, you know, when I'm painting water scenes, oftentimes, yeah, like, the colour is sort of more what I'm paying attention to be honest. Like, the colour gives me a great satisfaction. Oftentimes I feel like colour is really what makes a painting pretty special, right? Like, I mean, you can actually have a very simple composition, but if the colour is right, it just makes people excited. Like, people are like, oh man, I love that, that looks great, you know? Because the colour is just bringing them in, you know? Speaking of colour, I wanted to get some of that yellow from the sky into my sort of wave crash. So I'm just adding in, you know, some of that yellow in there, you know, making it more subdued with a grey, mixing it out a little bit so that you can just see that sort of, you see how it's just a little bit yellow, just a little bit captured there. There you go. That's how it's done. You know, that's yeah. Then boom, here we go, bringing in more of this sort of sea foamy green. That's almost like seaweed green, you know, like it's like almost yellow. Yeah, just bringing in all these sort of foamy, sort of aqua colours, you know, blending them in a little bit, bringing them in. There you go, look at that. Just make the shape, and then just plot it out, then add your white on top to make, you know what I mean, to make the shape of a wave. And then once you've got the shape of a wave, the rest is sort of easy, you know. I feel like the shape is probably the hardest part when it comes to waves, actually. Yeah, it's pretty fun painting seascapes and waves. I think it's just a really fun thing. Adding in all sorts of little, one thing that I think was annoying that I did do here was I added in a lot of my detail work, and then had to go back and sort of sketch around it, you know, because then I had to go in and add the waves at the back, or, you know, the sea at the back, you know, which is a lot more subdued and flat, so it didn't involve a lot of detail work, which was annoying, because yeah, I should have thought of that. I should have pre-planned, did that first, but I guess I was just sort of taken in with, oh, I'll do this first because my waves are, you know, an important part of the picture, and yeah, it just got carried away, and then sort of went, oh shit, I'm gonna have to add in all this background colour, and I've done all this detail work up front, you know, how am I gonna do this? But it worked out okay. It worked out fine. And, you know, again, like, you know, when there's a will, there's a way, right? you just have to keep on going. I mean, that's the thing, like, for me at first, what really taught me that lesson was painting mountains with oil painting. Like, that was one of the first things I was able to do well when I was learning how to paint from YouTube and stuff like that, was how to do mountains. And at first they were turning out awful because I was using oil paints, and again there was just too much paint on the canvas. I didn't understand that the paint wouldn't really break properly if there was too much paint there. So yeah, like, I ended up sort of playing around with that until I got it right. And that's really what sort of teaches you, just keep on playing around with something until it looks good. Yeah. And then adding in sort of these subdued blues in the back, so that not to distract from the sort of focal point of the sort of foamy green at the front. So really what's going into these blues is like umber, grey, blue, a little tiny bit of white. That's it. That's what's going into it. It's a really easy sort of mixture, you know, like, again, using the umber just to tone everything down, the grey to darken it a bit, and also tone it down, but then, you know, a little bit of white, you know, yeah, it just works. It's just good. It's good for seas, because seas, I mean, certainly, you don't want your sky to be overly transparent. You can probably get away with the sky being a bit more transparent than a sea. Seas are pretty much never transparent. They're always sort of dark, aren't they? Now I know we're artists, so a lot of the time we use artistic license, you know, with colour and stuff like that to create a cool effect. But like with your sea, you tend to want it sort of moody, stormy, dark. I feel like that has a really cool effect. So yeah, I would utilise some umber. You know, whenever I'm utilising, like, see, whenever I'm painting a blue for the sea, umbering it all up, baby. I'm mixing that umbering, baby. Yeah, I use an actual palette knife instead of letter opener. Isn't that brilliant? Yeah, I'm just, again, I think I added in, you know, just like that sort of colour, and then just let it dry a little bit. Yeah, so that I could then go in later and add just a tiny bit of detail on there. It's actually quite cool as it is, but I just say to mess around with it a little bit more. But also, like, the sandy beaches, like, I really like that sort of sandy beach colour, but I decided to add a bit of grit and a bit of dirt into it. Was that the right decision? Yeah, why not? You know, I think it's pretty cool, to be fair. Like, you know, it's fine. I mean, again, you know, sort of going for a rugged landscape anyway. I mean, I like how the beach sort of looks very, I don't know, like, almost otherworldly, which I liked about it. But then at this, you know, because of the sort of untouched aspect, but then adding in all this sort of grit and grime and dirt and all that to the beach, yeah, it just keeps things a little more interesting, a little more dynamic, a little more variety. So, you know, yeah, it keeps the eye a bit busier, I guess. So yeah, from that perspective, I think that was probably the right decision. I'm literally just using a letter opener to do this, scratching on colour, you know, greys, browns, whatever, you know, just to, again, try and make it a little bit more interesting. And I then eventually go and, you know, I'm going to add a bit more detail into this rock as well, the trees on, as well as adding in a little bit of green. And as you can see, I'm now adding in sort of like the froth from the waves lapping over onto that bit of the beach. So yeah. Really, one of the only things that I didn't capture was toning back the waterfall a bit. Looking at it here, you know, I mean, did it need tone back? Probably. I mean, it's hard to tell, especially when you've just painted a painting. Sometimes you're like, I should have done this, I should have done that, you know, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at the whole composition now, and I'm just sort of like, yeah, does it work? Doesn't it work? Who knows? I think it works. I think it's fine. I mean, it is fine the way it is there, but I also think it works toned back, which is what I ended up doing off camera, so it's fine. But yeah, this has been a very good, I think, test for me. I think this has been a good lesson for myself in just, you know, like testing out techniques, testing out concepts, you know, moving forward, you know, what am I going to utilize, you know, how am I going to utilize, you know, these different techniques when moving forward. So I think from that perspective it's been a really good lesson. And you know, like with art, I think we've discussed before on this channel quite a lot, you know, a lot of the time you want to push yourself. Yeah. So there's the end result. And, you know, as you can see, I have toned back that waterfall quite a bit. It's not as bright. Now you've obviously got, you know, like, the more sort of subdued, you know, like, the more subdued sort of like waterfall push back, and then obviously the light, you know, hitting the wave and the light hitting the rocks and diffusing into the clouds. So yeah, I mean, I think overall it was a success, and also, you know, very, very valuable for me, I think, to have done, because it just, you know, was such a great way to experiment. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, you know, art is about experimentation. It's about doing things for yourself and seeing where you can end up. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you for episode 15. Hope you've enjoyed, and goodbye.